All right. It's 7 o'clock on top of the hour. Let's see if we got Rob is on, Mike hanging out there somewhere. There he is,
Hiding in the corner.
hiding in the corner. Well, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us this evening. This is a FAA safety team webinar that we're putting on with the emphasis talking about Class Bravo, the beautiful Class Bravo for LAX here that we've all known to love throughout our flying here. But so we wanted to take a evening and just talk about some different things about the Bravo and talk about things like phraseology, NOTAMs, TFRs. So we're happy to join you guys. We had over 300 people register for this, so this is great. So as always, we're going to try to entertain in a good way, make this educational, and with the emphasis of focusing on safety. We'll do some introductions, but I'm Nate Morrissey. I work for the Long Beach Flight Standards District Office, and I am the FAA Safety Team Program Manager. And I think it's the three amigos tonight, our partners in crime. We got our FAA Safety Lead Rep, Mike Jesch. Mike, if you want to introduce yourself a little bit.
Sure. Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks and welcome to our party here this evening. I'm a flight instructor based out of Fullerton Airport. I am the FAASTeam lead rep for the FAA safety team in Long Beach FSDO. And I also fly professionally out of LAX. And I've flown around this area my whole life, basically. So I'm almost as familiar as the back of my hand. Maybe not quite so much, but happy to help and put on the presentation and answer any questions we can.
All right, thanks, Mike. And we got Rob Reddeg. Probably most of the people on the webinar know him, but for those who don't, Rob.
Hey Nate, hey Mike, it's always a pleasure joining you, gentlemen, and it's always an honor. Rob Reddeg, SoCal Approach, SoCal TRACON. I am the union safety lead at SoCal Approach. I've been there for 17 years. I work in the coast area, so what we're talking about tonight really hits home for me and what I deal with day to day in, or day in and day out. Before that, 9 years in the Navy on an aircraft carrier and both tower and approach control here in San Diego. So excited to be here, excited to answer some questions and open up the lines of communication with our partners of the airspace.
All right, great. Mike, do you want to go over some of the ground rules of using the Zoom?
Sure. Firstly, of course, thanks for coming. If you would like to get wings credit for this program tonight, congratulations, you've already got it. There's nothing you need to do. If you registered for the program with the email address that you use in FAAsafety.gov, then you will automatically get wings credit in a couple of days. Maybe tomorrow, maybe by Saturday. Certainly by the beginning of next week, you'll have that wings credit. We're going to probably plan on essentially ignoring the chat function tonight. So if you have a question for the panelists, don't put that in the chat. Use the Q&A feature instead. It should be a button down toward the bottom of the screen that says Q&A. Write your question in there, and we'll try to get it live if we can, or one of our panelists will type an answer, a written answer for you. And if it pertains to the material we're covering tonight, then we'll get to it. Otherwise, if it's something that's not related, we can do that over the next few days, and you'll have contact information by the end of the evening here.
All right,
And I
thanks for
think
that.
that's about all I've got for that. Let me launch a couple of polls here, actually. We've got a couple of polls to gather some demographics here. This first one I'm going to launch is just to kind of get a feel for who's in the room. What level is your pilot certification? The next one will ask what airport you fly out of. This one, are you a flight instructor? Are you a pilot? And how many hours of flight experience do you have? So we'll let this one run for a little bit while we continue the introductions here, and then I'll launch the other one. And then we'll have a little bit of idea about who you are now that you know who we are.
All right, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into just a few PowerPoint slides here to go over some stuff, and then we're going to be spending a majority of the evening going over some things in ForeFlight, but bringing up the chart and talking about different transition routes, etc. So let's dive into those
All right.
wonderful FAA slides. So one of the key things we want to emphasize here is every exchange of information is important. When you're communicating with air traffic, especially near the Bravo and the congested airspace we have, when you're making that call, have an intention when you're going to say something. Think about what you're going to say. And, I know Rob and Mike are going to jump in here in a second, but, think about what you're going to say it with clarity to the minimum extent you need. And, try to cut out yeah, it's like people, when they camp on the mic, it's like, yeah, November 1, 2, 3. It's like, yeah, I don't think Rob needs to hear, yeah. He just needs to hear November. It's like, okay, what else we got? Or they're taking their time on the radio and stuff like that. And it just increases congestion on the frequency. But then also too, if you don't have maybe the newest radios or something like that, especially with some of our older aircraft out there, if the transmission is coming over garbled, it's tougher when you're using slang. But what do you think about those guys or that, on that topic?
To add on to Nate, what Nate's saying from the air traffic control side at SoCal Approach, communication is absolutely the number one thing out there for us to be the most successful when it comes down to keeping you the safest, not the most efficient when it comes to the system. Every single air traffic control tower in SoCal Approach's airspace can provide you a code and go through that initial communication process on the ground of who you are, where you're going, what type aircraft, prior to you getting airborne, where it's a lot noisier in the cockpit, things are happening a lot faster. So if you're navigating the Class Bravo airspace at LAX especially, and you're taking off from any of our local airports, get that code on the ground. You can ask clearance delivery or ground control, hey, I'm 12345, I'm off of Long Beach Airport. I want to go northbound and do the Hollywood sign route, circle back around through the Special Flight Rules corridor. I would like flight following. They can give you a code on the ground so that the minute you get airborne and the tower, switches you over to approach control, we already see who you are, we see where you're going, we see your type aircraft, and that reduces the amount of transmissions in the air and takes up less time during the critical time of flying than if you would have done it on the ground. So we always encourage that everybody flying around in SoCal Approach's airspace, whether you're going to do a local flight or a destination flight, Long Beach to Big Bear, you can always get that code on the ground as long as the tower is not oversaturated with traffic.
All good advice. And I will add to that just a couple of things. Remember that switch on your yoke or on your panel that you push when you have something to say, that's a PTT switch. That stands for push to talk. It doesn't stand for push to think. So before you push that button, you should already have a pretty good idea of what it is you need to say. And that way you'll cut down on the mumbling and the fumbling, trying to figure out what you're going to say. And the other thing is, things happen fast in this airspace. We're going to come back to this in a little bit, but you need to stay ahead of the game and don't wait until the last instant to make your request known and try to get it negotiated. You need to get ahead of that power curve and well ahead of the time that you actually need it.
All right. Well, Mike has control of the slide, so.
All right, so I've launched that second
But I like
poll.
that push to think, Mike. That was
Which one?
push to think. I like
it. You've never heard that one before?
I haven't.
So it looks like about the most popular airport here among our attendees, about 10% of us fly out of Whiteman and about the same number out of Orange County. The largest majority, of course, is other. About a third of us, a little over a third of us here tonight, do not fly out of one of the airports that I quizzed about, which are all the ones surrounding the Los Angeles Class Bravos. So maybe it's mostly San Diego airports, but so that's kind of interesting. By far the most popular route is the Special Flight Rules route. About 73% of the people here have flown that, followed by the coastal route, almost 60%. So 3 out of 5 of us fly a little more than that, fly a little less than that, fly the coastal route, and a couple of helicopter routes. So that's interesting too. We got a bunch of helicopter pilots in here, and that'll probably factor into our discussion a little bit too. So about a third of us have flown the mini route. That's my personal favorite. I love the mini route. And then I did throw this question in there about, do you think the mini route should be kept available? 63% of the attendees here said yes, that should be kept available, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit too. As far as your comfort level with the Special Flight Rules area, most people are, they either love it or they accept it just fine, no problem. It adds up to about 85% of us. are comfortable flying that many routes. So I think that's kind of interesting.
All right,
All
moving
right,
on.
so let's exchange some more information.
So radio communication, for those of you that haven't checked out the AIM Chapter 4, Section 2, I'm sure most of you are reading this nightly. You know, but check it out. It's actually a pretty good thing to check out. And there's also a lot of other great resources online, you know, proper ATC phraseology. I think even AOPA has a pretty good little video on stuff, but you know, check that out. And then, you know, copy and read back all clearances and instructions and question anything you don't understand. We're not really going to dive into pilot deviations much tonight, but a bunch, you know, Rob and I and Mike, we were talking about this the other night at John Wayne. Rob was doing a talk, and I'd say almost 100%, if not, well, 99 at least, but 100% of airspace deviations probably would have been not happened or prevented had you been on flight following. So that's our public service announcement. We'll talk more about that. But if it doesn't
100%.
look right, I'm sorry, go Rob.
I 100%. And I mean, at the end of the day, if we're giving you flight following, we run you to the Class Bravo airspace because air traffic control made a mistake, we're not going to deviate you. That's just not a thing. We're going to keep you away from a restricted area down by Oceanside for us. We're going to keep you away from the warning area at Whiskey 291. We're going to ask you those questions. We're going to make sure to keep you safe, because if we stand there as air traffic controllers and watch you go do something and something unsafe happens, we have buy-in on that. So we do not want to get you in trouble in any way, shape, or form. We want to protect you from anything happening. So the only way we can do that, though, is when you trust us with that opportunity to give you flight following and keep you safe.
So
Great.
Rob, we had a question come in here about you mentioned getting a squawk code, a transponder code on the ground at a towered airport. At a non-towered airport, can they get us a code by phone using that clearance delivery phone number, or should we wait until airborne?
Technically, you can if you really wanted to. I would tell you the best suggestion at that point would be to just get airborne, get out of the CTAF frequency, make sure you're safe with whatever's going on in that close proximity to the airport, and then give the local approach control frequency a call. If you're not familiar with what that local approach frequency is, then maybe call that 1-800 number and say, hey, I'm departing VFR. I'd like a code. Can you give it to me now? Or what's the frequency I need to contact as soon as I get airborne? And I'll call you on that frequency.
And I guess while we're on that, one of the questions is, why do we need a code if everyone has ADSB? I think it's a legit. I mean, that's a
Yeah. So here's the reason why. You may have ADSB, and we may see you out there, and we may see that code, or we may see your call sign because we click on that. But at the end of the day, you're just a 1200 code. You're just flying around, and you are a missile. I'll refer to it as a missile, because your closure rate at a minimum is 100 knots to whatever other aircraft that we have. A lot of these folks out here these days have some aircraft that are even faster than that, but at a minimum, you are closing in on an aircraft that I'm talking to at about 100 knots. So if my aircraft is doing 100 at a minimum and you're doing 100 at a minimum, you're not talking to, we have a 200 knot closure speed with aircraft that one of them we're not talking to. So from the air traffic control side, all that looks like to us is that we need to take action 5 to 10 miles out. So if you're not talking to air traffic control, you got to look at it as you are a 5-mile bubble in the sky, because we are protecting a bubble that large from an aircraft we're not talking to the maximum step possible. If you have a faster airplane than that, that's even more challenging. Mike Jesch is on here. He flies very large airplanes. There's always that myth out there that air traffic control gives this priority to air carriers versus general aviation, especially in the terminal environment. I understand where that mindset may come from, but the truth is, even at the smallest air carriers that we typically deal with as a 737, I can tell a 737 to turn. I can tell a 737 to expedite a climb or descent. None of those things happen fast with a large airplane. The bigger the airplane, the slower those things happen, actually. So to have both aircraft on frequency that we're talking to just allows us to take safety actions to instruct the general aviation aircraft. Hey, maybe you're at 5,500 feet. Instead of being at 5,500, I need you to be at 6,000 because I'm going to run Southwest, I'm going to run Delta, I'm going to run American at 5,000 to give extra space in there to ensure everybody's safety. Now, if I have a 5,500-foot aircraft coming through my airspace that I'm not talking to, completely legal, doing correct direction of flight and all those things, I still am going to have to use another 500 to 1,000 feet to ensure separation and safety of that aircraft carrying 150 to 200 to 300, maybe 400 passengers on it. So you may have ADS-B, and that's great. You may think you have the whole picture. That is great. You may see the other aircraft out of your window. All of that is great. But from the air traffic control side, all we see is another target coming directly at our airplane, and we have no idea what they're doing. So we're required to take evasive actions at that point and basically protect you like you're an IFR airplane only because we are not talking to you and you are an unknown prediction in the airspace.
All right.
Okay, and moving right along, there's a bunch of questions in here having to do specifically with the special how to work into and out of the special flight rules area. We'll get to those in a minute. We'll probably answer all 3 or 4 of those questions at once here. So meanwhile, let's keep it going and talk a little bit about some type of miscommunication type things happen. Now, what do you have, Rob, for the best advice to avoid a miscommunication?
I mean, my best advice would be if you don't 100% understand what was given to you, ask. Even if the controller's grumpy about it. One of the biggest challenges we see in SoCal approach, or let's just say around Long Beach, is we have a lot of training going on. We need the instructors to be on their game just as much as the student pilots. If you're not aware, flying around in Southern California, it is the busiest approach control airspace in the world. We did 2.2 million operations last year. We are growing again this year, and we are expected to hit historic numbers. So while there's a lot of training going on, the instructors and the trainees need to be on their game 100% of the time. You expect that out of us as air traffic controllers. We need you guys to be on that same page. If you're an instructor and you took your student up and they're on hour 2 of training and you took them up at 11 o'clock in the morning on Saturday when our airspace is incredibly congested, you need to know when to say, hey, this is just not the time for you to learn how to work on your phraseology in the airspace. We expect you to step in when that happens. No different than we as air traffic controllers have to step in with our trainees and say, this is just too much for you right now. So it's a team effort. Just be ready to go. Practice those conversations on the ground. Bounce the calling air traffic versus pilot conversations on the ground. Practice them with your significant others at home. Practice them with your children. Practice them with your buddy at the bar. Whatever it is, it may sound silly, but I had air traffic controllers tell me they practice calling traffic during training on the cars while they're on the freeway. Traffic 10 o'clock, 2 miles, Toyota 4Runner, moving from 11 to 12 o'clock. All those things matter, especially when you're flying out here, because if you can fly in Southern California and you can master that in conjunction with air traffic control, I believe there's not one place in the world that you can fly that you couldn't fly in smoothly and safely.
Also
I will
for
say from personal experience, so my wife looks at me funny when I say, "Hey, November 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 request."
Yeah.
It usually doesn't end well.
I'm going to give you about a 2 on that joke. You're usually up higher.
It's
Usually
a dad joke. Come on, give me
you're,
some.
you're usually a solid 8 or 9, but
So
also too for all the pilots out there, for those of you that are using Flight Simulator, like X-Plane or Microsoft Flight Sim, there's VATSIM and Pilot Edge and some of these programs that are pretty good. It's amateur controllers, but on one of them, I think it's Pilot Edge or maybe it's VATSIM, I don't remember. But you have to test to get a higher level of being a controller on there. So it's good. You can actually do a flight. You can have people talking to you, so it can't hurt. And then also listen to liveatc.net for a particular area or frequency, and just listen. It's like, okay, so
yeah,
all right.
those are all great tools. So one of the biggest misunderstanding type issues is when you heard an instruction and you're really sure that you heard it correctly. And so you start doing what you read back and what they told you, but maybe that was wrong. And I've had that happen where, for instance, I'm flying a 090 heading and air traffic control says left turn heading 150. Well, that's the long way around to 150. So that might be what the controller said, but it might not be what the controller meant to say. And so if I get the long way around, often the controller will say left turn long way around heading 150. But if they don't, and you think that might be an incorrect instruction, it's best to ask that right away before you start the turn and make things worse by turning the wrong direction. That's an example to me of a verbatim read back that doesn't help. If you just read it back straight, maybe the controller doesn't catch the disconnect there, what you're really asking about. If you've got a question, make sure your question is clear and that gets cleared up before you proceed.
I would agree. I would agree with Mike 100%. If when I'm working traffic, if I need you to take the long way around, I'm going to say left turn heading 180 for traffic or whatever it is, just to like emphasize what it is. As a pilot, well, I don't want you questioning everything I do by any means because I need you to trust me. But if it's something weird like that, and I'm asking you to turn beyond the 180 degrees to the left versus going to the right, it doesn't hurt to say, verify you want me to go left versus go right. If right is 40 degrees, left is 200 and whatever degrees, or 320 degrees, then it doesn't hurt to say, just to verify you want me to go left. Affirmative, I want you to go left. And even if the controller's grumpy, don't worry about that. But that's a much safer option than, you turning or assuming that I was wrong and you making a decision to go a different direction because it's the shortest distance for that heading that we assigned.
All right.
All right, let's see here. So any other local examples of misunderstandings that you've seen, Rob? Maybe somebody brings a technique in from somewhere else around the country that doesn't play well here in SoCal?
Yeah, not using flight following.
Yeah.
I mean, I joke about it, you laugh about it. We can all make the decisions about it, whatever. But when you're flying in Southern California, you are not in Kansas. You are not in Colorado. You are not in North Dakota. You're not in Idaho. You are not anywhere else realistically in the world. So the idea of I will just fly VFR, I will get to my airspace, I will dodge all the different class Bravos, Charlies, whatever it is, and I'm good. I'm not going to use flight following. I would tell you that that is not the safest option available to you, and not just for you, but the other pilots flying in our airspace. So if you plan on to fly in SoCal's airspace, whatever your mission is, utilizing flight following to the maximum extent possible is always the safest option out here because it is the most complex and the most congested airspace in the world.
I would say too, I think something that catches a lot of pilots off guard is, maybe when they're on flight following and it's like, let's say they're, over Neva or offshore from Huntington Beach and, they're on flight following. And it's like, where are you going? Camarillo. How do you plan to navigate class Bravo airspace? It's like, oh, it's like they know, but I think it catches them off guard, that question. It's like, oh crap, what's that called? Special flight rules area. So it's like for all you guys out there, that's going to be a common question from SoCal. How do you plan to navigate?
So another misunderstanding, I guess, or commonly misunderstood is don't bother air traffic control. That's what we're there for. I mean, we are there to provide air traffic services to the maximum extent possible. So if you think I only have 20 hours or 100 hours or 1,000 hours, and I was just taught, don't bother air traffic control unless you absolutely have to. That is definitely a myth. If anything, bother air traffic control, because we just talked about the other night on Tuesday night in Orange County is what we don't want is a CFI or a DPE or anybody teaching don't bother air traffic control to a new pilot, especially who at some point inevitably is going to encounter a challenging situation in their aircraft that they're going to request assistance. And what I don't like is when an pilot is requesting assistance for their first time, is the first time they're looking for a local frequency to request that assistance, or saying, just go on 121.5 and request assistance. Well, guess what? When you key up on 121.5 and say, Mayday, 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 I need help, from the air traffic side, all we say is, who are you? Where are you? What are you doing? And we're wasting valuable seconds just trying to figure out who you are and where you're at. Where if you were just on the frequency, we could immediately get you assistance and get you to when under situations that are seconds matter. So do not ever have the mentality, whether you're a new pilot listening or whether you're a CFI on here or whether you're DPE who has taught something different in the past. Air traffic is your friend, and it is your safest options from get to point A to point B safely and then efficiently.
And
Well, we've
I'll
definitely
chime
got
in.
a lot
Another
of,
one, local misunderstanding that I've seen quite often is not using the charted reporting points. And you mentioned this briefly the other night. You know, I fly in the coast sector like you do. We got a bunch of Burbank people on here, Inland Empire sector. Well, you don't live in these areas. So if somebody uses some mall, some shopping center name, some business name, you probably, in all likelihood, have no idea where that is. And I've seen that myself. I was talking to Nate earlier today. I was flying a night flight into Brackett Airport one night, and somebody was reporting the IKEA. Well, how many IKEA stores do we have in the area? The only one I know of is down in Costa Mesa. It's nowhere near Brackett Airport, so there's no common understanding. And if we stick to the charted fixes that are on the TAC chart, everybody knows where those are. It's a much better way to go.
all right.
Yeah, just to touch real quick, and I am watching the chat to the max extent possible, and I'm not going to tell you that 100% of air traffic controllers are not grumpy. I'm not going to lie to you, and I'm not gonna blow smoke tonight. There's no question that there's always the exceptions to the rules. At the end of this, or at any point, if you want to reach out to me as the safety lead, if you ever feel like you did not get the service that you deserved, or if you feel like you got service that was above and beyond, please send us that input, whether you want to send it to Nate or Mike or myself especially. We will look into that and we'll see what we can do to either improve or at least get you answers on what happened that day. Because at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is improve the consistent level of safety and efficiency of the airspace. So I hear what some people are saying over there. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I'm not aware of some of the challenges that we have, but we need that input so that we can address anything that is not living up to the level of standards that are deserved of our local flying community, especially.
All right, I think we need to get through these slides because we got 22 questions.
Okay,
We're
just real quick question. Paul asked, do you want to talk to non-electrical, non-transponder equipped aircraft?
More than anybody.
There you go. I had a feeling that's what your answer would be. All right, so let's talk about NOTAMs for a little bit.
All right. I think we're all overwhelmed with the amount of NOTAMs that can be out there for a particular flight. But the FAA website, you can go and check out NOTAMs. For those of you using ForeFlight, I think that's where a lot of us use. I don't use like Garmin Pilot or anything like that, so I can't really speak to that. But here's the QR code. There's the website. Do you want to go to the next slide, Mike, to show how you can filter them?
I'm posting in the chat the link to that NOTAM page. You've got the QR code on there. You can use that as well. Those are both good ways to get to this NOTAM page. And this is the official FAA NOTAM database. So you have the opportunity to plug in a flight path that you want to fly from one airport to another, and that buffer is the width of the course path that you're interested in NOTAMs for. So you can fill in these numbers here, and oops, that's interesting. It's not doing that the right way. when you do that particular flight, this was last night, I pulled this up. We got only 783 NOTAMs, and you're expected to scroll through and read through every one of these and make sure you're intimately familiar with all the details of that. Or you can filter it down to the ones that matter. So let's say you're interested in aerodrome NOTAMs. So this is going to be, as you see these items over here on the right, things like approach lights out of service, PAPI's out of service, declared distances are amended. There's all sorts of changes over here. And you can sort it down. So when you filter it, this particular case, I filtered down to just aerodrome NOTAMs on this route, and we're down to 50 that I care about. A lot of these are obstructions or obstruction lights out of service, and maybe you don't care about a 300-foot tall obstacle that's 30 miles off your route. So it's a good way to narrow it down and keep it down to the things that really matter to you.
Especially when, well, let's go to the next. Yeah, TFRs. I think TFRs are a big one too.
For sure.
Making
this
sure.
particular example is about a presidential TFR. We get those over here sometimes, not so much lately. But these are all available on that TFR website. There's the QR code. And let me see.
Here's the truth about every TFR that is published. If you're using flight following, we will keep you away from any piece of restricted airspace that comes up either prior to your departure or while you come airborne.
Yep. Reason number 38 to stay on flight following and to monitor 121.5.
It is fascinating to me the amount of folks who depart without talking to air traffic control and violate a presidential TFR every time they come, no matter what president it is. It is fascinating to me to see the amount of violators that we have on the regular basis. And all that tells us as air traffic controllers is you asked us to come to the table and be 100% of the time, but as a pilot that day, that individual pilot was not 100% of the time. Utilize our help. We are there. We know when things are changing by the minute, and we will make sure that we keep you safe from any of those kind of situations.
Yeah, and these TFRs do pop up after you've gotten your weather briefing. So even after you've reviewed the TFRs and you launch, now you say you're on a 3-hour flight down to here, and this thing popped up while you weren't here. So here's one example that's coming up tomorrow, believe it or not. Going on that site, I just pulled this one up a little while ago. We've got some VIP TFRs coming in tomorrow. So if you go to that website and look at the map panel, I just told it to select California TFRs. You can see these two big TFRs up over LAX and over Beverly Hills there somewhere. And if you click on that TFR, you get this little thing. It gives you the TFR number with that detail. And that blue, those blue characters there are a hot link. You tap on that link, and here's the language of the TFR. So you can read it, and yeah, it's hard to read. It's 4 parts. It's all capitalized. It's yelling at you. And really the part that matters is about in the middle there somewhere, where it says that you can fly through it if you're talking to air traffic control. Transient ops are authorized for safety of flight or to meet operational demands. So you have to be talking to air traffic control. You have to have a discrete transponder code. So be familiar with the rules of that TFR, and that'll help keep you out of trouble.
You bring up a great point, Mike. While on the air traffic control side, we love when the president comes to town, no matter who it is and no matter what party they're affiliated with. But because so many folks are just afraid of a presidential TFR, it almost shuts down our airspace. And that's truly unnecessary, to be honest with you. So what Mike just pointed out is if you pay attention to those TFRs, outside of a presidential 10-mile TFR, as long as you're outside of the 10 within the 30 and you get flight following, we can get you out of your airport to wherever you're going. Are you allowed to do practice approaches? No. Are you allowed to hang out and do holds over a VOR? No. But if you want to go from, I don't know, Burbank or Van Nuys Airport out to Phoenix, when the TFR is centered over Long Beach, as long as you're getting flight following and getting that code, we can get you out of that airport and get you to wherever you need to go. The key to that is it's just one way out and it's one way in, and that's it. There's no holding, there's no practicing, there's none of that stuff. So,
Yeah.
not to give away a little secret, but just because there's a presidential TFR in your area, as long as you're outside of the 10 miles, you just got to get a code and we can get you to whatever your destination is.
Yeah, no flight training is another one. So, no, you can't do it. I wouldn't send a student out there to fly that day.
No.
And I wouldn't even do a dual cross country. But if you're just doing personal flying, yeah, you can do that. And last thing I want to just touch on, I don't think we're going to have time tonight to dive into it anymore. But this is a fire traffic area, an FTA, fire traffic area. I just found this out today. We're going to do some more programs on this because I think this is really important, especially as you know, we got a lot of fires that come up around this area and they have ways that they fly. And this is in a case that there doesn't necessarily have to be a TFR, but if there's smoke on the ground, if this is fires being attacked by aircraft, these are the dimensions of the airspace that they're working. Up to 12 miles outside, the firefighting aircraft are expected to contact the fire control people. And then if they have not established that contact within 7 miles, they can't come any closer than that. So they're going to be orbiting around the outside until they can establish contact tactically with their fire command. And then we got different altitudes that are in play based on whether it's helicopter, rotary wing traffic, or fixed wing tanker traffic, or the attack aircraft that hang out higher. And this might not be a TFR that's published as such yet. So just be cognizant of this. And we're going to make an effort here in the next couple of weeks to have another program on how firefighters work for those of us who aren't familiar. It'll help us all be a little bit more informed, a little bit safer.
All right.
So now on to the From the Flight Deck videos. Nate, what do you know about these guys, these gems?
If you guys aren't familiar with these, they're pretty well produced. You know, they put a lot of thought, a lot of time into these, you know, for the airports that are on the list, but you know, it's a good review, even if it's your own home airport to watch it. You know, you'll learn something. But if you are going to go to an airport for the first time, or it's been a while, and there is a From the Flight Deck video available, check it out. It's really good. You know, Mike's putting the link in there. You can screenshot this, or you know, try the QR code. But you know, pretty well done.
Okay, and yeah, how to avoid a pilot deviation, or once you get a pilot deviation, you're going to go through a process. And here's a program that might help you understand how that whole system works. So our job here tonight and in all these kinds of programs is to put Nate out of work so that he doesn't have to deal with chasing these things down and, you know, breathing down your neck in your inbox and all those registered letters and whatnot. So yeah, attending things like this and looking at programs like this will help you avoid that kind of stuff as well.
I'm going to make hats for us for the next time, and it's just going to say flight following. And all three of us are going to wear our hats every time, flight following.
Awesome. So yeah, is this going to match the shirts that we get when we declare an emergency?
Oh yeah, I want to start the Mayday Club, but we'll dive into that another night.
All right.
And the point of the Mayday Club is like, just real quick, if you ever need to, ask for help, declare an emergency, whatever you need, don't be afraid. You're not going to lose your pilot certificate. You know, it's nothing like that. You're fine. And if you ever have a declare an emergency and you're freaking out once you get on the ground by the FAA is going to come do something, we just want to make sure you landed safely, understand what's going on, and that's it. So
yeah, and if you do get a Brasher warning, Rob will probably talk about this in a minute. That turns into a big distraction on the pilot. And if you get that notification, if you're busy, you don't have bandwidth or time to copy down the phone number, just say unable and try to clean it up on the other end. But if you do this, if this happens to you, you really need to put it out of mind and then focus on what remains of the flight and getting there safely. And then we can do an after action review and figure out what happened and clean up whatever was left. So don't let this be the distraction that causes you to make another bigger mistake farther down the road.
So just want to touch on a couple of these questions coming in on the chat or the Q&A, sorry. And I think I can answer them quickly. Let me try to pull these up real quick. Oftentimes planning through special flight rules quarter at Santa Monica Hawthorne, they won't give you a code for flight beyond in the special flight rules. Tell them you want a code. Don't let them tell you no. They should give you that, and if not, it is, let us know. Do you have general recommendations to navigate drone NOTAM airspace? Just stay out of it. And bird strikes at night? No, I don't see a bird on my scope during the day or night, so we rely on you guys to tell us those things. Flight following, we have ADSB. Why do I still need a separate code? Because ADSB doesn't give you a code and it's unpredictable of what you're doing. We don't know when you're going to climb. We don't know when you're going to ascend. We don't know if you're going to turn left. We don't know when you're going to turn right. Do we lose flight following or the information on you if let's just say you took off of John Wayne, you went for the special flight rules corridor, and then you got picked up on the other side? Yes. Once we terminate you, you are VFR year 1200 code. So we have to go through the whole conversation again on the north side of the Class Bravo airspace because that information does not transfer. This is why if you hear any of my presentations, I will tell you if you're going to go through the Class Bravo airspace and you can do it on the coastal route where you're constant contact with ATC, that is the best way to go. So we don't have to do that twice. Frequency was busy, flight following, flight following, first frequency was busy climbing through 3500 southbound from Long Beach. I had a near midair with a drone. It took at least 90 seconds to break and report to SoCal. Yeah, I would say, be less polite. Unfortunately, we do not see drones in any way, shape, or form. If an aircraft is flying coast route and there are clouds at 5,500 is a problematic request. What did that say? A different altitude. It kind of moved on me. Sorry. Yes. Is a problematic request 5,000 feet temporarily to stay under the clouds, or does the coast route become unavailable? It will become unavailable at that point. We would ask you to tell us what's going on, say you need to do this, but after we will suspend the coast route, and rightfully so. Don't worry about that. Just know, because that's for safety. We do not want people flying through routes that they cannot work the altitudes that they are required to do. That's all about safety, and don't feel bad about that.
Yeah, and I'll note here, when flying in Class Bravo, the Class Bravo VFR weather minimums are just 3 miles visibility and clear of clouds. The 152 rule does not apply in Class Bravo. So you don't have to be 500 feet below those clouds. You can be just below them in Class Bravo because you're getting positive control from SoCal.
Yeah, where should we draw the line between an air traffic control instruction order given and just advisory information on VFR flight? If you are talking to air traffic control and we tell you, it is not advisory, it is an instruction. You shall comply. I hear people say they don't use flight following because they don't want to hear all that background chatter. I love all that, and I love that VFR flight following and being a pilot, you get to go see the world, and life is good and great. When you're in Southern California approach or flying around Southern California, you are not doing the safest thing out there for yourself or other pilots by not using flight following. It is not a scenic tour out here in Southern California. I hate to break that to you. I've had so many pilots tell me I will not fly in SoCal unless I have at least 2 people on board. There is a lot going on. If your intent is just to go fly and see a beach and see the mountains and talk with your family and not get the highest level of safety, SoCal is not the best place for you. No offense. There's people out there that do it all the time. Maybe you've done it safely 99% of the time. But I can show you many, many, many examples on a daily basis that would definitely dispute that claim. When are you trying to fly to get flight following and have other eyes on you? SoCal TRACON says unable flight following right now. It's happened a few times. If we say no, there's a reason for it. We just couldn't keep that level of safety required from us once we take on flight following for you. So at that point, that should be spidey senses. We can't keep up with the traffic advisories that are out there. So if we can't do that, if we say no, we have to justify that. If something were to happen to you, and we had to do a investigation with FSDO and whoever else, we would have to justify that we said no. And we teach that on the air traffic control side. If you say no, fine, but you better be able to defend that if something were to happen to that pilot. So just want to get through a couple of those since there seems to be a lot. Sorry.
Yeah, and one war story I'll tell you. I was working with an IFR student over Paradise holding at 4,000 feet, and air traffic control finally said, We're busy. Flight following cancels. Clock 1200. Frequency change approved. And I'm inside the middle of the Charlie. What are you gonna
Not
do?
good.
So, hey, all right, I'll just exit. So we took the fastest way out. We flew south and got out of the Charlie and got out of the way. But it happens. Sometimes ATC is just too busy. They're saturated. They can't handle another aircraft. So, as an instructor, it usually happens on instructional flight. It seems like just have a good plan B and a plan C in place. Something else, another way to accomplish what you need to do.
All right, let's keep going the slide so we can get to the.
All right, get to the good stuff. So I got tours happening next week at SoCal TRACON, right, Rob?
No.
Oh,
SoCal TRACON.
you're killing me.
They're under construction. The other towers, it's, we like to joke there's no standards in flight standards, ha ha ha. But it just depends on the tower. If they allow tours. John Wayne didn't allow it for a while, for a long time. Now they allow it. I don't know where Long Beach stands, but as the air traffic manager changes too, it just depends. So
yeah, it depends
at
on
SoCal,
staffing. There's a whole bunch of issues that can depend on.
and at SoCal, tours are very much embraced. You will have to deal with me probably for a couple hours. The only issue is right now we're under a complete remodel of the entire facility. So there's construction going on. I got an update from the air traffic manager today that we're looking at July is probably the safest bet right now for us. But there's a lot of tripping hazards and construction hazards going on that we can't take any chances to anything going on. But once the door is open, they will be open. And we love having our partners in the airspace come by and visit and exchange information on how we can work together, to continue to ensure the highest level of safety in the airspace.
all right.
Yeah. Okay, and let's see. So I thought we'd switch over to the iPad now. One of the things I find as an instructor working with students is quite often they don't know how to get the information out of their iPad. So I thought I would show a little bit about how this works. So stand by while I switch over devices here. And so I'm going to show on ForeFlight because most pilots are using ForeFlight. Last time I did a little unofficial questionnaire on this. About 75–80% of pilots are using ForeFlight. So this is the lion's share of the market is using this tool. And here we go. So the first thing is you want to make sure that you've got these documents available stored on your iPad, not just while you're at home looking at them with your good Wi-Fi connection you've got at home. So you click on the More down here, you come to Downloads, and we're going to select Data Settings. So what kind of data do you want to get? And you need to at least make sure that you've got VFR charts selected down here. And the other charts as applicable for whatever kind of flying you do. And then you need to turn on whichever base map. This isn't associated so much with documents, but turn on whatever base map data you need for where you're flying. And then come down, you scroll down here and select the proper types of data. So the terrain, you need to come down here quite a ways. You want to make sure you got your taxi diagrams for whatever states you're flying in. We come down here some more, continue to scroll. We get terminal procedures, of course. This is going to be your instrument procedures, SIDS and stars. So for California here under VFR charts, you need to make sure that you've got the Los Angeles sectional, Los Angeles TAC, and ideally this flyway planning chart as well, although I'll have a caution on that in a little bit. Continue scrolling down. Here's some more helicopter charts for our rotor head friends here in the neighborhood tonight. Bring your LAX east and west helicopter charts on board. IFR highs don't matter for this. Into the documents now. And we've got, a couple important ones here are these fly charts. Make sure you have that selected. I've got some older ForeFlight manuals in here. You can ignore those. And visual chart supplemental. This is the big one. Make sure that one is checked. And that's going to get you the data in ForeFlight that applies to the Class Bravo transition routes. So once you've selected all those documents, and then you'll see this little number down here will grow by a whole bunch. And when they're all downloaded, now we've got these documents on board. The resources are here. We just need to know how to get to them. So there's a couple of different ways to do it, but here's the way I like best is click on the Documents tab down here, and we're going to come up to the catalog. Scroll down here in the catalog and go to the FAA drive, and that's going to take you to this folder with all these documents that looks like this, and there's a couple of subfolders on there. The main one you want to look at are this visual chart supplemental, and you should have a green check mark in the upper right corner here. If you have that green check mark, that means all these documents are downloaded and installed on your iPad, available to you in flight. So you tap in here, and whichever regions you have selected are going to be in this folder. But the main one we're concerned with here tonight are this Los Angeles Tax Supplemental. So you open up that document, and this is all the information you need to fly on these routes. So if you're going to do the Coliseum route, this is how you get to the data to fly it. You can page through here. Here's the mini route instructions, the special flight rules area, and so forth. So all of these are available. The only way to make sure you've got them is to follow that procedure. Make sure you select them and then download them and then know where to find them at a moment's notice in flight. And then pull this up before you get out there onto the route so that you're not fumbling when you're talking to Rob trying to get set up on these routes.
And don't put it on air traffic control to be able to give you the instructions on how to follow those routes.
Exactly. You should
The
know.
first thing we're going to ask
command.
you from the north or the south is, how do you plan on navigating class proper airspace at LAX? And if you do not have a route, I'm going to ask you, let me know what that route is. If you say I don't have charts on board, that's where you get a phone number to Nate. But at the end of the day, you are supposed to be ready to fly. So you see you want to go through the class Bravo airspace, you should have all this planned. While we talked specifically to LAX. To piggyback, there was a question about the class Delta VFR transition at Lindbergh. Is it going to come back? I would tell you I'm about 99% sure that it will not. And it's going to go the same lines as the mini route at LAX. And the only reasons for those is if an aircraft goes around at any of those airports, it leaves very, very, very little room for error to separate from a 2,500-foot aircraft going over the top of LAX and an Airbus 380 Super going from, coming in from Australia. If they have to power up and go around, there's very, very little room there, and things are happening really, really, really fast. So these are some of the routes that you're seeing on the news that are being suspended at Reagan National and stuff like that. Anything that puts large airplanes with a lot of people on them in very close proximity to small aircraft, whether it's a helicopter or another Cessna, those things are being highly
they're scrutinized right now.
Scrutinized, and they are now going. The pendulum is swinging to a full side of safety and saying, is that really necessary? And in most situations, they're saying no.
Well, and as the example here, this is the mini route that goes right over LAX, and you don't talk to SoCal TRACON in this route. If you're going northbound, you start with talking to Hawthorne Tower over here. You get on the route, you switch to Los Angeles Tower, and they have to tell you you cleared to enter the Bravo via the mini route, and then you cross over to the other side, and then you talk to Santa Monica Tower. And this is at 2,500 feet, where I'm trying to find the altitude. Yeah, 2,500 feet. And for an aircraft, a jet on approach into LAX, their missed approach altitude is 2,000 feet. And this was the problem. If they go around early, let's say they're at 3,000 feet and their landing clearance is canceled and they're told to go around, they have to continue descending to 2,000 feet. If they're below that, then they have to climb to 2,000 feet, and that's pretty low. Usually our missed approach altitudes are a little higher than that. So it wouldn't be unusual for the jet to overshoot that climb a little bit, and now they're in conflict with you on this mini route. So this route is probably going away, as sad as it is to say. It's one of my favorites, but it's just too close to the jet traffic. There's also a couple helicopter routes. There's the shoreline route just offshore, below 150 feet. There are some restrictions on that route already. There's several letters of agreement between Tower and various operators on how to do that. They can't use the route while there's a Airbus A380 departing and some other issues. So that's a tough one. The special flight rules area, I asked about that a little bit in the poll that we talked about here, and it seems like most people don't have a problem flying this route. But here's the thing, just like Rob said, you've got to have this document on board your aircraft. It's a requirement. The following rules shall be adhered when using the Los Angeles Special Flight Rules area. The pilot shall have, not should have, shall have a current Los Angeles terminal area chart in the aircraft. So this one right here that I've got that's 12 years old doesn't cut the mustard. I got to have a current one. So I showed you how to install that and make sure it's installed in your ForeFlight. So make sure you have it, make sure you know how to find it, and then make sure you follow these rules. And so this 155 is the weather requirements. We talked about that a moment ago inside Class Bravo. 215 says you've got to have a transponder and you have to be squawking 1201 on this route. So there were a couple of questions there. If you're, for instance, coming from the south, getting flight following from SoCal, when you get onto this mini route, SoCal TRACON is going to say, Rob, what's that instruction say?
Say that again?
You probably don't give that because you don't work that Del Rey sector there, do you?
No.
But you're going to tell the aircraft to fly via the mini route, frequency change approved, squawk 1201. Call me on the
Special
north
Flight Rules
side.
Corridor. Radar services terminated. Squawk 1201. Frequency change approved.
So you're on your own. So this leads to one of my favorite questions I always like to ask pilots. Is it ever okay to be in a Class Bravo airspace without a clearance?
Yes.
And this is the only instance I know. I think there might be one in New York also. So you are inside Bravo. This is not a corridor in the old sense. It's a hallway that you're flying down that's Bravo all around and Echo through the middle. You're inside Bravo, but you have to follow these rules. So the other rules are you got to navigate on the Santa Monica VOR 132 radio. Doesn't say you can use GPS, so stick to using VOR. What do you do when the Santa Monica VOR is out of service, which it has been lately sometimes? You have to be on these altitudes. Indicated airspeed shall not exceed 140 knots. All your lights any collision and position lights shall be on. Landing lights is recommended. I would strongly encourage you to have those on. And turbojet aircraft are prohibited. So I tell this story quite a lot. The very first time I flew the Special Flight Rules area, I was passed up by a Cessna Citation. I was doing 130 knots and this jet was just whizzed right by me. They weren't talking. They were exceeding the speed limit and all these other rules they were breaking. So
we had a Super Tucano, which is like a military trainer type airplane, screaming through there, and there was a lot of stuff going on there. But the pilot's like, oh well, we can't fly 140 knots. We can't fly less than 140 knots. It's a single engine turboprop. I'm like, you probably can. But it's like, well, show us in the manual where it says that, and he couldn't. But it's like, there's no excuse. And if your airplane can't fly slower than 140 and maintain level flight, which I don't know what type of airplane that would be, don't be going in there.
Maybe you should be on one of the other routes.
But he was a turbo, he was a turboprop, which is allowed, but he was just screaming.
Yeah.
And it's like, that didn't fare well for this gentleman.
And the other thing I'll mention here, I just did this route a couple of weeks ago with a pilot. We flew out of Hawthorne Airport. Once you exit the Special Flight Rules to the north here, when you pass Santa Monica VOR and you're not on that route anymore, you kiss off and you head north here. Let me zoom into this airspace so you can see. You get off of Santa Monica right here. You're going northbound here. That is a distance of only 5 miles, give or take. If you're doing 120 knots, that's 2 minutes and change. Things happen fast. And if you're at 4,500 feet right through here, to stay below the Bravo, well, come on. Stay below the Bravo, which, let me get the right chart up here, has a 5,000 foot floor. And you're heading northbound here. The Burbank portion of the Charlie up here has a ceiling at 4,800. You're going to have to either be inside the Bravo or inside the Charlie. So you've got to reestablish contact with SoCal TRACON in pretty short order after you get off that route. So if you're not making an effort by the time you get to the Getty Center here, it's too late.
And
so be ready for that. Be prepared. Have the frequencies ready.
And for those of you who are thinking, it's like, I can just be a 4,900 and I'm fine. No, bad idea.
Yeah, you want to give yourself at least a 200, I would say a 300-foot margin to below or above any airspace.
And I can't agree with what Mike just said there, and I would actually add to that. 500 feet would be my absolute minimum. There's a myth out there that a Class Bravo or Class Charlie airspace has built-in buffers to protect aircraft outside of that airspace by some longitudinal space or I'm sorry, lateral or longitudinal, whatever the two are. But that is actually not true. We run our LAX arrivals into LAX all the way down to the bases of all those Class Bravo pieces of airspace. Class Charlie airspace at John Wayne. We run aircraft into and out of the Class Charlie as they go into John Wayne Airport on the departures and arrivals. Long Beach departures. Long Beach airspace only goes up to 2,700 feet. Our departures, all of our jet aircraft that departed at Long Beach, their initial assigned heading is 3,000 feet. So if you think, oh, I see a Class Delta that only goes up to 2,500 feet, I'm safe at 2,600 feet. That keeps me in the airplanes from that airport safe, and I don't need to use air traffic control services. That is a myth, and that is not true. So again, utilize air traffic control services to the max extent possible. We will keep you and the others around you safe. There's just too much going on. I asked the question of the folks in the room on Tuesday night in Orange County, how many of you are VFR certified? And about 40% said that. If you're only, and I don't want to say only because I think it's a huge accomplishment to be a pilot in any level that you are, if you are only VFR certified, you really have 20 to 30% of the entire picture of what is actually going on. You look at an airport like LAX, and there is a dozen approaches into LAX. There is a dozen departures into LAX. And if you expand out, the influence that LAX has spans so far beyond the Class Bravo airspace. An aircraft coming into LAX gets cleared for an arrival 200 miles out. An aircraft into John Wayne Airport gets cleared 60 miles out. So if you think, oh, well, I'm just outside of a Class Charlie airspace at John Wayne, and you see there where his cursor is, that airspace only goes up to 4,400 feet. And you go, well, heck, I'll fly over the top at 4,500 feet. How did an airplane coming from Dallas get into John Wayne Airport and suddenly appear at 4,400 feet or below for that airport? They did not. They have to come in from all sorts of angles, whether they're coming in from the east or whether they're coming in from the north or whether they're coming in from the south. So please don't assume that just because you're safely away from the delegated airspace that you have somehow put yourself in a position to navigate around any of them in a safe and efficient manner without using air traffic control services. A question came up in the chat earlier, the Q&A. As long as you're talking to air traffic control, we will let you through the Class Charlie airspace at John Wayne every single time. I've actually never in my 17 years at SoCal Approach seen a denial of the Class Charlie airspace at John Wayne. Will we possibly vector you a little bit to ensure that we can keep things safely moving efficiently? Yes, we might do that. So if you're just trying to go straight point A to point B, nobody bothers you because you're just in a hurry and you got get there-itis, and you're mad at air traffic control because they asked you for a vector, then obviously you probably are going to skirt the airspace and you're going to do you, while the rest of us all work our way around you individually, while the rest of the hundreds, if not thousands of peoples and airplanes around you are getting moved around at that point. So please, please, please work with us. We're just trying to work as a team. That is the number one goal here.
Okay, and we had a question here about somebody asked on this special flight rules corridor. I indicated that I said it ends at the Santa Monica VOR, and the respondent who's anonymous says he thought it ended at Manchester Boulevard. Well, Manchester Boulevard is the north end of the section um, of Surface Class Bravo at LAX. So the route itself is this dashed line that goes all the way up here to Santa Monica Airport, and you need to call Santa Monica Tower to enter that airspace over here. That's my take on it. So, okay. So What else did we have on this? So that's those routes. Let me show you a technique that I've used a little bit, and how to find where these are on the TAC charts. It's all well and good to have these documents in here, and it's important to have all this information, the frequencies and the altitudes and so forth. But on the charts, here's what I've done is I've made a route that I can store, a stored route. I call it LAX CIFRA. So all I have to do is select that route, and it draws that route right on the map. It's from the Santa Monica VOR on that 132 radial. It happens to end down here at Hermo. So I could pull this route up, and then if I have the proper equipment in the airplane, I can send this into the navigator in the airplane and pull it up and fly it using that. So that's a convenient way to do that. I've done similar things with the coastal route, for instance. So it starts up here near Van Nuys Airport, over the airport, and then down to the Vincent Thomas Bridge down here. So that's one technique for doing that. What
So
else?
we have an anonymous attendee. I always love anonymous people. You're not quite right on the definition of practice approach. VFR may be the common thought as to the definition, but check the 7110.65, which is the air traffic control manual that pilots are not familiar with, and the pilot controller glossary. Practice instrument approach. An instrument approach procedure conducted by a VFR or an IFR aircraft for the purpose of pilot training or proficiency demonstration. I hear what our anonymous attendee is saying, but if you are IFR on an air traffic control frequency and you ask for a practice approach, the air traffic controllers do not know what that is. We only know your IFR and you want an ILS approach, or your VFR and you want a VFR practice approach. If you're IFR and you say, I'm coming into Long Beach Airport, I would like an practice ILS approach. Say again, are you VFR or are you IFR? I have you IFR, I was going to vect you for that approach. So do not confuse the controllers to put them in a situation that we don't know if you're IFR or VFR, you're confused in what your requirements are, because when we give you a VFR practice approach, we say practice approach approved, no separation services provided. Versus IFR, we say cleared ILS approach. We do not want to blur those lines because there's a lot of legalities between the two on what's legal, what's not legal. But if you're IFR, do not tell air traffic control, I want a practice approach.
Right.
Say, I just want this approach. And you can say, I want the ILS approach to Long Beach, followed by a VFR practice missed approach or something like that. That means you're going to cancel with the tower and go VFR at that point. But the terms practice under IFR to an air traffic controller in the radar environment do not really ever exist.
Yep.
And we don't want that confusion to happen because we do not want to put you or anybody else in a difficult position. So I hope that clarifies.
It's a little beyond the scope of our talk tonight, which is why I kind of gave him a quick answer, which was that if you're IFR, there's no such thing as a practice approach. It's an approach. And so he's differing with me a little bit on that, but we're mostly talking about the VFR transitions around the airspace tonight. So, the other thing I wanted to show, we did have a couple of requests in for the other 20% of pilots who are not using ForeFlight. They're using something else. So one person pointed out a FltPlanGO. This is a free app that works on Androids and iPads. I happen to have it installed here as well. So in FltPlanGO, what you want to do is come over here to the Downloads button and look in the Documents tab. You're going to scroll around in here and make sure you've got the Los Angeles Class B airspace, Los Angeles TAC chart, and Los Angeles flight chart. Make sure those are check marked over here in green, and that means you have the current version of these documents on board. So now to get to them, you come over here to the Binders button, and one of the documents in this binder is going to be Los Angeles TAC chart. You click on that, and you get basically the old section on the side of my trusty old TAC chart over on the side in the paper. You get essentially this is now on your iPad, and you have to zoom in a little bit. You don't get separate pages like you do in ForeFlight, but all the same data is there. So hopefully that answers that one.
unless you got another one off that, let's check out the different airports, north and south of the Bravo and some best practices.
Okay, let me go take that off. We'll come back to ForeFlight here. And as an example, the airports that are a little bit farther away, maybe Long Beach and Fullerton and farther on the south side, maybe Whiteman's far enough away, but if you're far enough away from one of those, and if you get set up on flight following with SoCal as you should, then they will vector you toward the route. You better know how to get to the route, especially the special flight rules area, and follow those instructions. The tricky bit is if you're flying from a close-in airport, especially here on the south side, for instance, Hawthorne Airport is within spitting distance of the South Complex at LAX. So you can't do a straight out departure and climb up to 4,500 feet and get on this line. There are not very many single engine general aviation airplanes that can make that climb. So I happened to do it just a couple of weeks ago. I was in a fire breathing Mooney, a very nice Mooney acclaim out of here. And so I talked to the ground controller from the run-up area, and I said, what's the best way to get onto the special flight rules northbound? They said, well, we're going to ask you to do a box departure to the south. So what we did was basically a left crosswind departure down this way, and we wanted to stay out of the Torrance class Delta here. So we turned just before that little notch and came out here to the east, almost to this freeway, whichever one that is. And then we turned northbound, and the instruction was do not overfly Hawthorne Airport. So turn again before you get there. And I think the concern is they want to make darn sure that you're not going to cross this blue line and get into the LAX Class Bravo surface area. You have to stay clear of that. So then we proceeded northbound. Once we were above 2,500, Hawthorne gave us a frequency change approved. We're clear of their Delta airspace. So we turned this way. And by that point, we got to 4,500 feet, probably about the time we passed to beam the airport. So we had the altitude long before we made the turn. We intercepted the line and proceeded on our way. So that
Somebody's
was
asking
a pretty good way to do it out of Hawthorne. What do you see out of Torrance Field?
Hey, real quick, Mike, will you turn off the traffic? I think that might be.
What, that's too much for you?
Well, I just think it might help. Because I think if you're like me, it's like, wow, Southwest is
There's a lot of traffic around there.
I see a lot of pilot deviations in my future for tomorrow.
Yeah, you're gonna have an inbox real full.
Just looking at these questions while you were talking, Mike, so I apologize for not paying super close attention. There's some new RNAV approaches into the area, but the procedures are NA'd. Why? When will we be able to use them? For example, the RNAV to runway 7 at Long Beach, RNAV 26 right. The runway 7 approach, you got that map right there into Hawthorne. Look at where Hawthorne is at on the map versus LAX. Both of those approaches have been NA'd for reasons that are either air traffic associated or procedurally NA'd because maybe something didn't meet the requirements as needed after they were published. There's another one that comes out of Lindbergh Airport. I think it's a Class E departure that the intent of it was climb via, so no instructions to be made. It didn't publish the way that it was expected, so it got NA'd to protect everybody. But you look at where Hawthorne Airport is. If you put a circle around that, that's less than 3 miles from LAX. One IFR airplane into Hawthorne Airport when LAX is east traffic, or if it circles around from the east to the west to run, requires us to shut off all arrivals and all departures. And I say shut it off, but it requires us to sequence the arrivals into LAX and all the departures into LAX for one aircraft into Hawthorne. Can this be done? Yes. It is an incredible undertaking to make that happen. But at this point, because there's so few and far between, they have NA'd it through a collaborative effort between Hawthorne Tower, LAX Tower, and SoCal approach and the FAA on what's the safest option here. We just don't want aircraft coming into Hawthorne expecting that approach and end up in extensive delays and have to be put into a divert situation because of the challenges of the co-location of Hawthorne and LAX. So
Yeah,
when you
the
go,
problem is that it's not authorized for a simultaneous approach with the LA East arrivals.
correct,
So
we don't have a
the
waiver.
the LA North Complex and South Complex are waivered like that. Those are okay to do parallel approaches there, simultaneous parallel approaches, but Hawthorne is not. So if you had an airport on this, an aircraft rather, on this approach, it would basically shut down LAX until they've landed.
Correct. Versus clarification also, though, if they're coming in from the east to the west, we can actually run what we would call trip simuls, 3 finals coming in. So we do have a waiver to come in from the east to the west, where we can run a final at Hawthorne, 1600, 2600, and 3600 LAX from each complex, as long as everybody's established. Then we can reduce our required separation. But we do not have that waiver from the west coming to the east. So there's the reason for the NA there. But all non-authorized procedures were a collaborative effort between air traffic control facilities, whether it was the tower or approach control or the center, whatever, whoever's impacted by that. And that's why those are not available right now, or they were published in violation of any kind of requirements of them. So we had to just NA them while we figure out a solution to them.
Yeah,
So
needs
what if,
more work. And this is looking at the RNAV RNP to 26 right at Long Beach. And it's an interesting, it's got some curved approaches. Most of our 91 aircraft can't do that. Um,
And it
but
goes right through somebody else's airspace.
yeah, it goes right through Los Al airspace here for one. Um, but
let's,
yeah, just stand by. Sometimes these approaches are made and they're developed and published before they're flight checked and approved for use. So, it may eventually come available. We'll have to
all
see.
right, let's talk about Torrance. Is that all right?
Sure.
VFR transitioning the Bravo.
Yep.
So Rob, what are your thoughts? Like, I mean, I think some people, if they can, they're going to try to contact ground and ask, hey, can I get flight following? Possibly, like if they want the coastal route.
Yeah.
But if the tower says unable, I still think they should ask, ground again, if they're not familiar. It's like, hey, maybe take off to the west, climb up over the water, and then, get on with SoCal if they're going to do the coastal route, or, maybe take off to the west, climb up, if they're going to go for special flight rules. But I think all that should probably be coordinated with the tower, and SoCal. But
Correct.
what do you think?
I don't like to ever hear that the towers are denying any requests for services. I don't believe any tower should make the decision if somebody's looking for flight following unless the approach control has instructed them to do that. What we don't want is the proximity to Long Beach Tower at a Torrance. So if you're going to depart at a Torrance, and your goal is to climb up to 4,500 feet out of Torrance, I'd rather you do that west over Palos Verdes, depart northwest, and do it over the water as you climb to 4,500 versus making a right-hand turn and climbing up to 40, doing circles between Long Beach and Torrance up to 4,500 feet because of all the IFR departures that come off of Long Beach. Their main runway there, 3,000, are they're climbing to 3,000. Then we need to get them climbed up and we need to get them out of there. So our goal with air carriers or corporate jets, whoever they are, King Airs, their initial altitude is 3. We want to get them up. We want to get them into the class Bravo where they're super protected and then get them out of there as fast as possible. So any kind of circling and a climb in between Torrance and Long Beach is not the recommended place to do it. The best place to do it probably is just west of Torrance, directly west of Torrance, where it says like Palos Verdes Point right there. And just, circle right there south of Torrance Airport and then kind of bring yourself back around at 4,500, maybe with the anticipated climb of a climbing left turn to pass back over the top of Torrance at 4,500 feet and then join the special flight rules corridor. That'd probably be your best option right out of Torrance that will keep you away from the Class Bravo at LAX because we don't want you in there because the departures are there, but it'll allow you to make a left turn, just stay right along the coastline, climb, join with the route and go to the north. That'll keep you away from the LAX departures. That'll keep you away from the Long Beach departures. And then you can join the route at 4,500 feet. But if you're struggling to climb out of 3,000 feet over, I don't know, what is that mobile intersection there? Uh, that VFR point mobile, MOBIL, yeah. That you are in direct conflict with jets coming out of Long Beach that we're trying to figure out what you're doing. You're not talking to us. That creates an amazing challenge for us.
And when Rob's talking about IFR departures, some people might go, "Ah, big deal," but that's where all the air carriers and all the jets are going. Not all of them, but a good majority of the departures out of there, and it's a significant issue because above 2,600 feet from the Long Beach Delta, it's people can legally be going through there squawking VFR, and it's a big problem. It's something we're looking into. Just to help protect traffic.
Yep.
So
Okay, a quick question here. What is the easiest way to find the ATC frequencies entering or exiting the special flight rules north and south? And they are not published on this chart. So what I would suggest is go to the next chart where you do have SoCal approach frequencies 1246 on the north, 1281 on the south will probably get you started. Is that the right one for Del Rey here on the south side?
I'm sorry, say that again. I was reading the
So
question.
is this 1281? Is that a good frequency on the south side exiting the special flight rules corridor?
No, 127.2 would be the appropriate frequency there.
Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, if you're coming south, you'd be 27.2. I was looking for a frequency to go north. I haven't got a response yet, but a couple questions there that were asked earlier. You stated you can fly in the outer ring of the presidential TFR using flight following. Why do they always say you must be on VFR or IFR flight plan? Because that's what you have to do. You need to file that flight plan and you need to get a code from the tower. And the reason why you have to do that is because then it's constant contact with that pilot and that aircraft, so we know exactly who you are and what you're doing versus a 1200 code out there. So you could 100% do it. File that VFR flight plan. Ask the tower for a VFR code. I want VFR flight following from Van Nuys to Palm Springs because the TFR is over Long Beach, and they should give it to you. Nothing's 100% guarantee, but you can still fly without worrying about, oh man, I'm grounded, even though I'm 20 miles away from LAX where the actual thing is. I'm not sure what Santosh is talking about. Please clear the bucket. The coastal route flight plan to declare once done before discussing unless necessary. Not sure really what that means. The coastal route is actually the most efficient route for us because it ensures flight following and constant contact with the aircraft. If we need to turn you, if we need to climb you by 500 feet or descend you because of other traffic, we can do that. But it puts us in constant contact. And instead of us terminating you south of LAX, and then having a whole nother conversation on the north side of LAX to pick you up again, you are in constant contact. Why isn't Long Beach a class, Charlie? Great question, Eddie. I will tell you that we are currently in the baby steps of looking at the airspace at Long Beach to see what it is that we could possibly do to improve it. Rob, do you have any chance to know why I pick up a squawk code and VFR departure on the ground at Van Nuys? That SoCal departure has no idea who I am after I depart, and I have to repeat everything about my aircraft. If you have a squawk code and VFR departure procedure on ground at Van Nuys, that SoCal departure has no idea who I am after I depart, and I have to repeat everything about my aircraft and route again to the approach control. I haven't encountered this issue at other SoCal approach. That doesn't add up to me, to be honest with you. We at least see who you are and where you're going. If you stated a specific route to the tower, we won't know that on the SoCal approach side. So we do see who you are. We do see where you're going, unless they put in local LCL. But after that, you will still have to tell us what your plan is to navigate because we just don't have the time to make a phone call to the towers each and every single aircraft as they depart. You guys didn't answer the question of where you get those frequencies.
Yeah, I'm
Not
showing
sh
the coastal route section right now, which has the numbers you were talking about. 127.2 on the south side, 134.2 on the north side.
Yeah. And that would be the same frequency, 34.2 on the north side of the special flight rules corridor also. So
Yep.
for those are actually, yeah, 100% the same. They're going to be the same almost for both the coastal route and the
Yeah, and the
special flight
point was
rules.
made though, it'd be good to put it on the special flight rules chart. I agree with that. For those who don't know, I'm also involved with the Southern California Airspace Users Working Group, where we work to try to make these charts as accurate and useful and helpful as we can. And I think that's a good idea. I think we should work to get these numbers on this chart right here, the CIFRA route too. So we'll try to
Yeah,
do that.
I support that.
Okay. What else do we have here in the notes we want to talk about?
Well, let's talk about, oh, sorry, go, Mike.
No, I'm asking you. What do you
Oh,
got?
okay. I thought you were looking at notes. Let's say we're at Santa Monica and we're
Okay.
gonna head southbound. We're gonna depart off Santa Monica and either do the coastal route or the special flight rules route, and we're gonna need to gain some altitude. Um, so I would say if you can coordinate with ground, you know, but yeah, I'm sure this question might come up, but it's like, do you recommend trying to get flight following while you're getting altitude? It's only, I mean, obviously if you're going to do the coastal route, but if you're going to do the special flight rules route, I mean, it's so quick, you're going to be in and out, talking to them. What are your thoughts, Rob?
That's a difficult one. That's the challenge with air traffic control is nothing's 100%. But if you're departing out of Santa Monica and they say, frequency change approved and you're still at a 1,500 feet, 34.2 is that frequency above Santa Monica. My recommendation would be key up to 34.2 or have it ready and say, hey, I'm 12345, just departed Santa Monica, climbing a special flight rule corridor. Do you have any traffic advisories for me? They might say, nope, frequency change approved, have a good day. They may say, yes, I see an aircraft departing the special flight rules corridor at 4,500 feet. I mean, you're only going up to 3,500 feet. Or maybe they just have something else going on. But kind of no different than if you're coming off of Torrance and you want to climb to 4,500 special flight rules corridor, just doing it on your own and circling out there, and we have no idea who you are and what you're doing. The amount of aircraft that don't change their transponders appropriately or don't have their ADS-B appropriately programmed to show their call signs is more than more people probably understand or know. So I always recommend that if you're going to depart out of Torrance, if you're going to depart out of Santa Monica and you want to climb to special flight rules corridor, give that frequency 34.2 on the north side or 27.2 a call and just say, hey, just departed, climbing to special flight rules corridor. Do you have any traffic or should I get flight following? Nope, I got no traffic, radar service, continue VFR, frequency change approved, have a great day. Hey, I do have traffic. Stop your climb now at 3,500. I'll get you higher shortly. I always say put that in the air traffic control side to the max extent possible. Don't assume that there's nothing going on, or don't assume that you are safe because of what you think you see on your iPad because of ADS-B. Just remember, still to this day, not all aircraft are required to have ADS-B. Yes, the vast majority of GA are. But when you start talking about law enforcement, when you start talking about military, when you start talking about different other entities that are out there, they are not all required. So what you think you see on your iPad or what you think you see on ForeFlight may not be the complete picture of what's actually going on.
And Erica in the comments, she said, if you depart Santa Monica using the special flight rules area, you stay with Santa Monica Tower until advised to squawk 1201. At least that's been her experience. So good to know.
Yeah. And Santa Monica Tower has a radar screen, so they can, even though they may only own up to whatever it is, 2,700 feet, they can see on their radar screen if there's something in between 2,700 and 3,500 and potentially give you a traffic advisory if nothing else.
And Anonymous here says you can ask for a right climbing 270 off of Santa Monica. So you basically end back up right over the airport, and hopefully you climb to 3,500 by that point, and you're on your way. Okay, so Robert asks about the coastal route is preferred. You said the coastal routes approved. Are the Hollywood and Coliseum routes less desired?
No, they work great also. The only reason I say coast route is because the majority of GA aircraft are below even 6,500 and 5,500 are kind of high for most of them, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
No, the Costa route, I'm sorry, the Hollywood Park route and the Coliseum route were great. And
the way I figure it is the coastal route is kind of lower. If I'm flying into or out of an airport that's closer
Basin
to
Airport,
LAX, Orange County, Fullerton, if I'm going in or out of Camarillo or something, I would prefer the coastal route because it's lower. If I'm coming a longer distance, if I'm crossing LA, if I'm coming in or out of the San Diego area, I'm going north of the Burbank area, Santa Barbara, something like that, I'd prefer a higher altitude route. But the important thing I want to point out here is on this route, the northbound route on the coastal is 6,500 over Santa Monica VOR. 7,000 feet right at that VOR is a very popular aircraft for arrivals into LAX. All the traffic from the north and northwest overseas is coming over the Santa Monica VOR at 7,000 feet. And then, so you compare that to the Hollywood Park route, you're at 8,500 feet. So you make a sandwich there with little airplanes up high, big jets right in the middle, and little airplanes again down at 6,500. So be on your altitude.
And, just real quick with that, I don't know how many people realize that wake can come down 500 feet, no problem. I mean, like if you guys search, there's plenty of incidences, even in the last few years, or occurrences that, in the flight levels, when you have 1,000-foot separation, aircraft have got rocked. I think there was a Challenger that got flipped inverted, and this stuff happens, and they were 1,000-foot separation.
That Challenger was severely damaged, and the airplane was totaled after that incident. And I had a pretty good run-in with some A380 turbulence 2,000 feet above me in the flight levels one time. It was 20 miles away by the time I crossed their wake, and it was a good jolt. So you don't want to mess with those. Okay, what else do we have here? I think we're coming up on, we've covered most of the stuff we want to cover.
Should we do lightning round on the questions?
Sure. Yeah, I'll leave my iPad up here in case we get a question that deals with that. So we've done that one.
Ronnie asked about helicopter routes. To be honest with you, I don't know that anybody here is an expert in any of those.
I am not a helicopter guy, but I just pulled up the Los Angeles helicopter chart. So these are the routes. They have names on them. The shoreline route just over here, Culver, Sepulveda. These are the names of the routes. They've got frequencies on here. I presume this means if you're on this dogleg, this Slauson dogleg, you probably want to be talking to LAX Tower on 119.8. I believe that is the helicopter frequency at LAX, which often is not staffed. And then we have these other routes out here.
It gets combined up. I don't know if I want to say it's not staffed. It's just combined with another one.
Yeah. One thing I just discovered on this just the other day, this was pointed out to me, actually Sunshine showed this to me, is just west of Brackett Airport. If you're referring to the helicopter route, this freeway is mislabeled. This is not the 210 freeway. This is the 57 freeway.
I blame that on SCOG.
Yeah. Exactly. So the issue here was if you, a helicopter pilot who's not familiar with the area and you're over this freeway and you tell Brackett Tower that you're over the 210, the controller is going to think you're up here. And this is where the 210 freeway is. So we're working to get this chart updated. That one's a pretty serious mistake.
It says 127.2 work for check-in, head north via the coastal route after departing Catalina. Yes. 27.2 or 27.4. That frequency is actually 27.4 over Catalina. Stay below 4,000 feet or contact air traffic below 4,000 feet. If you want to really nerd out on this stuff, go look at the RNAV arrivals into John Wayne or Long Beach, the Rocker arrival, the OC arrivals, and you'll see their crossing patterns there. But ultimately, if you get above 4,000 feet between Catalina and Long Beach Harbor, you are T-boning every airliner that goes into those two airports, with John Wayne Airport being the third highest visibility airport in our airspace, up almost 20% traffic this year. 27.2 or 27.4, give us a call on either one of those before you get to 4,000 feet. We'll take care of you. Which sector is the hardest to sign controllers off in for air traffic? Again, air traffic at SoCal Approach, we are the busiest, the most complex airspace in the country, or actually in the world for a terminal facility. When I say terminal below 15,000 feet, I will tell you, I think mine is, to be honest with you, the San Diego area probably is, everything south of Oceanside is probably the most complex because of the military, and the mix of military, GA, and everybody else. There was another one on here about, hold on here.
Rob, are you hitting answered when you click these off, or?
I'm kind of keeping up with
Oh,
them.
Yeah, so am I. I just didn't own some of them. It's okay. Keep going.
I will try to do that.
No,
Are they always willing to set you up with FltPlanGO? I answered live. Yep.
Yeah.
Was it recorded? I don't know. Can you quickly explain one more time the areas you turned on in ForeFlight and how to load at the LAX? Send Mike a text message or an email. I think we can go over that again. Which sector frequencies do I control personally? I have 25. I have everything between LAX and Oceanside. So I have 27.2, 25.35, 21.3, 28.1, 24.1, 33.85. Now those are my 6 certified frequencies that I actually work. If you go flying tomorrow morning, I will be there tomorrow or Saturday. I will be there on those frequencies. So depending on which they are. So feel free to say hello unless I'm really busy. I love when people say hello unless I'm really busy and they go, "Hey, Rob," and I go, "Oh, I'm busy." So, but it's always a pleasure. Can you click one more time? Okay, you did that. I think we hit almost all of these.
So, okay. Let me start back at the top again here. I had a couple I wanted to come back to. Okay, one question when you're setting up flight following, somebody checks in, they say November 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with request. What do you think about that with request?
That would be my recommendation.
And
If
my
you're if the
technique has
first
always
time
been,
if
I
the
just use my
first
tail. They know I'm making a request or I wouldn't be calling, so I just leave that
right,
part out. That's just a technique thing. I don't think it matters a whole lot to most
there's no
controllers.
formal answer to that. If you are airborne and you weren't already getting flight following, then my recommendation is you should have done that on the ground. But if you're in the air and especially the key is to key up, as Mike alluded to earlier, key up first, I'm sorry, listen first, see what's going on, then key up. If it's really, really busy, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 request. Okay. All right. So, because even though I may not respond to you right away, what I actually have done in the keyboard is typed in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think you're going to be VFR because you're calling me in the air. So I'll click enter and I might come back to you and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, squawk 0212, maintain VFR, say request, and then give me the rest of your information. But what I don't want is to be super busy and you have your new 8-hour training in the cockpit, and it's the very first time they're learning how to talk on the frequency while I'm super busy. That's where we depend on our counterparts on the pilot side to have to recognize the complexity of the airspace at that time that we're talking. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 request is always my recommendation. And then we'll either come right back to you and say, go ahead, or we might talk to 4 other airplanes and come back to you after that. So,
Yeah,
and then after that, then you can give all that information.
it's a fine art to be able to develop your instantaneous feel for what's going on in the frequency. Is there a helmet fire going on the part of the controller or another pilot on frequency, or can you just let it rip?
One of the questions was, thoughts on Palos Verdes Long Beach practice area. Culture there is to stay on CTAF rather than flight following. It's been my experience in speaking with the majority of the schools. Most of them are trying to use the CTAF. So it's like, I think if you're there, possibly in the practice area, and everybody else is on the CTAF, be on the CTAF. If you're transitioning the area, maybe be on flight following. But I think that's a tough one.
Well, I will keep a political answer. And the problem with the practice area is whoever created it, whoever designed it, and whoever placed it did not actually take into effect the approaches into Torrance Airport or Long Beach Airport in the runway 12. And all you have to do is go pull up the approach into Torrance Airport. The approach into Torrance Airport at 2,000 feet stretches directly out in between Angels Gate and Queen's Gate. So the challenge for air traffic control is I have 10 airplanes in the practice area, all on CTAF, doing whatever they're doing. And then here comes Nate trying to fly into Torrance Airport and do either a practice approach, all the way from a Skyhawk doing a practice approach to a Phenom jet trying to come through and do an IFR approach.
That
It
sounds like
is
something Nate would do.
it is almost impossible for us to take faster moving aircraft through there uh, in the practice area because of the way that practice area was designed. We won't even get into, if Mike wants to pull up, when Long Beach goes runway 12, look at the approach into Long Beach runway 12. It is almost impossible to run jet airliners through that practice area when there's aircraft in the practice area. So I always find it entertaining when 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is out there in the practice area and they're going back and forth at the breakwater for 30 minutes at 2,000 feet because they're doing whatever a pilot is learning to do. I am not a pilot. And then the first thing they do when they call me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I have a request, and they say, I would like a practice approach at Torrance. So you brief the approach, you see the approach, you see the altitude the approach is at, you have a general idea the direction the approach goes, the course of the approach goes, and then you call me from sitting right on the approach. Well, while you were doing that, we denied the approaches to everybody else going into that airport. So I have a little bit of a soft spot in my heart for the practice area. I understand the challenge between both sides. There's only so much traffic advisors that we can give out there. But if you're maneuvering between the Queen's Gate and Angel's Gate, between 1,500 and 2,500 feet, you have suspended approaches into Torrance Airport for us because of the safety concerns there. And then you see Brecky there, that's going into Long Beach. That's cross Brecky at 3,000 feet going into Long Beach. Look where those aircraft have to come for to get there. So this is another reason why I always say get flight following from us. You may know what's going at a Torrance Airport. That's great. You may know what's going on at Long Beach Airport. That's great. But these flight paths in and out of all of these airports extend 10, 20, if not 30 miles away. And unless you've checked the ATISs at all of those airports, and unless you know every single flight path for every single aircraft VFR, IFR, that's where your air traffic control friends are there for, and that's what we're there to help guide you through.
And it can
Sorry.
really help us out a lot. There have been times when I've been in this practice area talking to SoCal TRACON, getting flight following, and the controller will ask me, hey, can you do this work you're doing west of this location? And that
Hmm.
keeps me clear of the arrival path. It doesn't matter to me where I do these maneuvers, but it helps out ATC, it helps out all this other traffic. So work together with everybody and we can try to get everybody through there quicker and safer.
Let's start at the top. Make sure we get all these guys' questions. Arturo's question. Do you see that one, Rob?
For VFR flight following, do you want us to provide you with our desired route as part of the request? Example, Skyhawk, VFR flight to Torrance via mini route at 25. Yes, that gives us an idea because the first thing I'm going to ask you is, how do you plan on navigating the class Bravo airspace if you came off of Torrance? I'm going to go east underneath it. Perfect. I get that. The mini route, Arturo, I love you and I wish I can give it to you. Unfortunately, it's probably not going to be a thing. So the other aircraft, I experienced at least 2, 3 times where I asked for a beacon code for the need for flight follow testing up at 10 and 12,000 feet in a helicopter, and you were refused. This is where my contact information will come in. Please send me that. Hey, I tried to take off yesterday. I was trying to do the right thing. I was trying to get VFR flight following up at 10 to 12,000 feet. I always want to talk to an aircraft that high because you're talking about getting into air carrier traffic at that point or jet traffic.
Yeah,
I,
So
he doesn't
I would say
mention
on
where
stuff like
this
that,
was. So
if you're going to be doing a maintenance flight and it's something out of the norm, call SoCal TRACON, or call
yep.
Rob ahead of time. Be like, hey, what should I do? Because sometimes we'll do check rides in jets, and I know it's going to clog up a bunch of stuff. So I call SoCal. I'm not asking for special favors. It's like, hey, we need to do this, 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 and this. Where and when? It's like, you know what? If you guys are up before 9, you're going to have no problem around here. And then we give them the N number and everything, and it's like, okay,
I've done the same thing to do an IPC. I called Rob one day and I said, "Hey, I need to do this and this and this. Where's a good place?" And he said, "Well, right now coast sector's looking okay." And we nailed all the approaches we need to do. We got holding, and it was awesome. So best to lay that plan down before takeoff, and then you don't get a surprise in the air.
I don't want to assume where they were trying to do those helicopter operations, but the same controller that's going to complain that they have to talk to you or deal with that is going to be the same controller that complains that there's a plane out there in the way of their jets that is causing them an incredible amount of work to get away from. So we are not perfect. I'm not going to pretend that we are by any means. But yeah, I would say if that is happening, let me know. You can even let me know in advance, a day or two in advance, say, I'm going to do this flight tomorrow. Can you help me out? If I'm available to pass that information on, we actually have a special events website for SoCal TRACON. So if it's something that you really need to get done, you're looking for help with that, you can email that or email me, and we will try to get you taken care of. Anything you would like, the LE pilots? I'm not sure what
Law
LE means.
enforcement.
Law enforcement. Okay.
I think that's what that means.
No, we love our law enforcement. I think we work really well with all of them. The vast majority of the helicopters are low level and they don't really cause any problems. But if you're outside of a class Delta, you're out and you're close to them and you might be within the flight paths, let us know. Give us a call. We'll take care of you. Brad there at the bottom, if you're talking to air traffic control and it takes you through Class Charlie airspace at John Wayne, you are good. So don't worry about that. We get that question a lot.
I think I answered that one already. I think I wrote an answer to that earlier saying, "Hey, you're already talking to SoCal. You've established communications. You're
Good.
good to go."
Which Class D airspaces can we fly through on flight following without requesting a handoff to the tower? It seems to be it's okay to do in some, but not others. As long as you're talking to air traffic control, technically by the books, you can fly through any of them. I would personally recommend that if you're talking to SoCal Approach and you need to transition another class Delta, hey, ask. Hey, especially if you're trying to get low through them, like Fullerton, for example, we transition Fullerton all day long. If you're trying to go through Fullerton at like 1,500 feet, that's a whole different story than transitioning it, cutting off the west end of it and landing at Long Beach. I know that creates a lot of confusion for pilots, and I apologize for that. I didn't make the rules. I just have to follow them. But at the end of the day, if you don't feel comfortable, hey, am I good? Can I go through Los Alamitos airspace? Absolutely. We got you taken care of. And go there. Just double check and make sure you're good. But as long as you're talking to air traffic control, it doesn't say Fullerton Tower air traffic control. It just says two-way communication with air traffic control. It doesn't specify anything different than that, which unfortunately brings a huge gray area into the system. We should be taking care of you, but that's where I think it's a team effort. If you're trying to do something kind of wonky or get down low through an airspace, let us know so we can coordinate.
And if in doubt, I would say just ask the controller, "Am I cleared to enter that
Yep,
that Delta space?" And that'll get you
100%.
on the tape as being aware of it at least. So nothing will follow up. Okay, it looks like both you guys have some of those you need to mark as being done. So I had another question. A helicopter guy, Doug, asks. He asked me separately. He says they've been told that you need to be 3,000 to 4,000 feet in some places, a lot of places, in the basin to get flight following for radio reasons. You want to talk about minimum altitudes for radar coverage and comm radio coverage?
Um, yes. Um, we get radar data from ADSB as our primary input, so it's top down. Unfortunately, the frequency reception still comes from bottom up. So depending on who you're talking to and where you're at, has limitations on the frequencies. Almost every airport, though, as soon as you get airborne, or whether it's uncontrolled or not, if you're on the frequency that is near that airport, we can pick you up pretty quick. Palm Springs tends to be the only area sometimes that we have some challenges with because of the limitations with all the mountains. But overall, send me an email and say, what's the primary frequency over Long Beach Airport? I'm going to tell you 25, 35. Basically, the minute the tower switches you, if you're not getting flight following, we can talk to you. Same thing with John Wayne Tower, depending on what direction you're going, or Torrance Tower. So every airport has a frequency that almost immediately when you leave the Class Delta or the CTAF frequency, we can talk to you. There is some holes. If you come off of Corona and you want to go west, we can't talk to you if you go west on 21.3 till you get out of about 2,000 feet.
Yeah,
So there's some
I was just
small,
going to ask about that one. That's right over my house, and it's usually about
yeah,
2,000 is the minimum there to get
yeah.
121.3.
So, and the challenge with that one is the minute you can reach 21.3, you are in direct conflict with the downwind of John Wayne at 3,000. So there's no question that's a known issue for us or challenge of the airspace. But, as long as you're trying, great. That's all we're looking for.
Okay, and I've seen a couple of questions here about those. How did I get these documents again in ForeFlight? Should I run through that, Nate? Do we have time, or you want to cover some more before I?
Let's get through all the questions.
Okay.
Can you share the routes you made, Mike? I don't know if
Yeah, so let me bring those up here. I'm going to filter for ones that say LAX. So these are all the routes I've defined that include LAX. So I've got the mini route, Coliseum route, SIFRA, Hollywood Park route, and coastal route. So I just save these as individual routes, and you click on that and it brings it up and it draws it on the map. And if you wanted to add to that, then if I wanted to use that to be the foundation for my flight, let's say I was flying from Camarillo, so I'm going to insert before here. I'll put Camarillo. So
I think,
and then
like, is there a way to share
I'm going to go
those?
to SNA, so I do that, and now I've got the whole route. And it's just a saved route. I saved that route, I tapped the star, and I named it, and then put it in, and there you go.
Sorry, I went to, somebody asked for my contact information. I went to type my name and then email and phone number, and all it went enter, and that was the end of that. So,
My
yeah, it's available. I can give it to you. My name is Rob Reddeg, Reddeg. My phone number is 858-722-2817. Just shoot me a text. If you got any questions, I'll take care of you. I got bricked on for requesting. I don't know what bricked means. It's like, my daughter drops a lot of terms on me that I'm not aware of anymore.
I think that means you got dropped.
I got bricked on for requesting 8,500 between John Wayne and Avalon. Why? Controller tried to fly my airplane. I don't want to laugh. But
I will.
I always find it entertaining when I'm on 2535 and a Skyhawk calls me off of John Wayne going to Avalon, and I say, what's your requested altitude? And they say 8,500 feet, and I just kind of laugh and I go, okay, like, good luck. Like, and I kind of want to see it, and it never fails. You get up to about 4,700 feet and you're like, okay, I'm good, I'll go back down.
But here's why: is that class Bravo is 7,000 to 10. So if you go to 8,500, you're inside the Bravo, and this is right on the arrival corridor into Orange County, Long Beach, LAX.
I think bricked means somebody laughed at you or potential, but that's probably all it was. I hate to say it because unless you have some sort of high performance aircraft, the distance between John Wayne and Catalina, I have never in my 17 years there seen an airplane actually make it up to 85 and go back down to Avalon. So I don't want to say somebody was having a little fun with you, but that's what it sounds like to me. But yeah, John Wayne arrivals come in at 5. LAX arrivals go in at 7, right through that entire corridor. Long Beach arrivals are coming in at 4. So just let us know what you're requesting. We'll do our best to get it to you. If you don't feel safe, let us know, and we'll do our best to work around you.
Okay. This is a loaded question. Why is an LGB class Charlie?
I think I answered that earlier.
Okay.
Answered live.
Asked and answered.
All right. Next one. Do you see this one? Rob, do you have by any chance know why every time I pick up a squawk code, do you see that one, Rob?
Oh. Yeah, departing Van Nuys, they check in with SoCal, and SoCal has no idea who you are. And you got the code.
I think I answered that earlier.
Okay.
They should know who you are. They should know where you're going at a minimum. How you're planning on getting there and the other details they do not know because the tower and approach control, we don't have the time to be online with each other completely. So, but at a minimum, they should know who you are and where you're going, and then any other details should be shared.
All right. Do any of the
And
VFR
sometimes the
routes?
ball just gets dropped.
Yep.
Do
Well,
any of
not even a ball dropped on that one. It's just that we don't communicate those things.
Yeah.
If you tell the tower I want to depart from Long Beach and I want to go to Van Nuys, and I want to go from Van Nuys and I want to go to the Hollywood sign, and then I want to go to Dodger Stadium or whatever, the tower never passes that information along. They just give you a code and give us our call sign into your destination. That's all we get from the approach control side. Nobody has time to exchange that information on the lines.
Yeah, there's only so much room in that tag to store any kind of information like that. So.
Correct.
Well, okay, Krister has a pretty good question. Do any of the VFR routes over the Bravo provide better wake turbulence separation? I had a scary situation on the coastal route.
No. I'm not sure what a scary situation is defined as. Unfortunately, unless it's with another heavy aircraft, we're only required to have 500 feet. It is one of the reasons why the coastal route, if you've flown northbound on the coastal route before and you've been at 6,500 feet, that we just send you to 6,000, is to provide 1,000 feet separation with heavies coming into LAX on the north side over Santa Monica VOR. But they all have their own challenges. They all have their own flight paths that they conflict with. And when you're dealing with anything around LAX, you're dealing with Phenom jets all the way up to Supas, the ABE 380. So it just depends on the time of the day and what you're coming through. If somebody says traffic 12 o'clock, 5 miles, heavy aircraft at 7,000 and you're at 6,500, and you don't feel comfortable, just say, can I descend or can I make a left 360 for spacing? Do not hesitate to speak up for what you think is needed for the safety of your aircraft.
All right. When ATC issues a Bravo clearance, does the controller add a note to the flight info so the next controller knows that the aircraft has already been cleared into the Bravo?
No, but we have pre-coordinated procedures that basically say, hey, this frequency is supposed to do the clearance, or this frequency is supposed to do the clearance. So that's all coordinated behind the scenes. The only thing that's in the scratch pattern and the data tag tells us what route you're going through, but it doesn't actually say that they've been cleared. Technically, it just is an agreement that we have behind the scenes of who's supposed to do what.
Okay. Let's see. What is a pilot to do if they are IFR on approach, then are given a heading or a vector, then something like Newark happens where there's no transmissions or radio for 90 seconds?
Be ready. Treat it the same way you would if you just lost your radios and it's now an emergency. If you've lost comms with us, whether it's our fault or your fault or any facility, go ahead and put in that code and do what you need to do to get home safe at that point. And that's just unfortunately the situation that all of us would be in under those circumstances. So you just got to be ready at all times, no matter where you're flying into, because that could happen anywhere at any time, whether it's in SoCal, NorCal, New York, Atlanta, Miami, Dallas, Denver, or South America. You always need to be ready that the technology could not perform at the level it's supposed to.
All right, so Mike's answering the URL for SCT. I think that was another question at the bottom, Mike.
Yeah,
I don't know
asked it about 4 times so far.
Okay, we'll put it in the chat.
For what?
Rob,
is there a website for SoCal TRACON that the public can access?
I'm not sure. No, we don't really have a regular website that I'm aware of that is going to provide you any answers. That's kind of why we're here tonight.
Yep.
All right, Rob, just curious, when aircraft depart from various airports, at what airport do they appear on your radar? And do you have tools to declutter the display so you're not overwhelmed by dozens of targets?
With ADS-B, we can see most targets within 200 to 300 feet off the ground. So that's a fantastic change to the system over the last decade. Works really well as long as everybody has ADS-B.
Yeah.
All right, and then the last one, and then we're right at time at 9. Is this being recorded for playback later?
Or
It's
to hold
making a
you accountable
recording.
later.
I'm going to leave that up to Rob and you, Nate, if it's okay to publish it. I'll get that in a day or so. And everybody who attended and those who did not attend, everybody who registered would get a link if that's okay.
Yeah, and if you guys have feedback on this, email Rob. I'm also going to put my email in there. So if you ever need anything from flight standards, anytime, if you guys got questions, comments, concerns, maybe not the sarcastic remarks, but, let us know. But if you like these events, give us some feedback. Rob and I love it. It helps being able for Rob and I to be allotted the time to do this. So they need the feedback. So anything helps. But so I think that's about it. Rob, thank
And
you
I saw
again.
quite a few comments go through about other subject matter that's kind of beyond the scope of what we're talking about tonight. There was a request for information about tech routes, for instance. I would love to put together a program on how to fly tech routes for IFR pilots, and I've been wanting to do that for quite a while, so I probably will. And then somebody did make a request if I can just quickly walk through again how to download the documents. And we're done with all the questions, so let me hit that, and then we'll get out of here. So,
Hey, I'm
info.
gonna say goodnight to everybody. I gotta be to work at 6 tomorrow. So
Egads.
I appreciate everybody for taking the time to be here tonight. I appreciate Nate and Mike for setting this up. And if you haven't met with the three of us or two of us together, we're always out there. We'll be out there more. You have my contact information. We will have doors open at SoCal Approach here in the near future. If you want to come visit, let me know, and we will make that happen as soon as we possibly can. But I appreciate everybody, all of our partners in the airspace out there that attended tonight. I'm available for you. Shoot me a text, shoot me an email, shoot me a call, whatever it is, or either one of these gentlemen, they will get to me. And we appreciate everything that all of you guys are doing every day for all of us to work on. As I always say, the safe flow of traffic in our airspace, followed by the efficient flow of traffic in our airspace. So thank you, everybody, and we'll see you guys soon.
See you, Rob. I'm
Thanks,
going to
Nate.
log off too,
Always
Mike.
a
So
pleasure. Good to work with you again.
yeah, thanks, Mike, for putting this on. I'm going to log off too.
Okay.
All right, see
right.
ya.
And in that case, I'll stop the recording and thank you everybody for attending. I'll stick around for a couple of minutes afterwards and I'll walk through this how to get the documents on board again. So thanks very much for coming, for your attention, and for being a part of the airspace team in SoCal. Good night, everybody.